Can Israel, in your view, and you're well known in this field, can Israel defend itself from the Iranian response?
No, the Israelis do not have that capability, and that is why they're dependent on the entire NATO force. They have mobilized their forces to stop Iranian missiles, but to a large degree, they've failed so far. And the more advanced Iranian missiles and the more destructive Iranian missiles haven't been used yet. The Iranians are largely using older missiles that have been in stock for 20, 25 years, and a few more advanced missiles. But the Israelis so far, despite that, they have not shown, the US and the Europeans, they have not shown the capability to block Iran, despite the fact that their radar bases in Turkey and Qatar and the Emirates, in Bahrain and elsewhere have been used to help them, and the airspace of Jordan has been put at their service in order for them to block Iranian missiles and drones. But we see that despite all that, they are still effectively targeting the Israeli regime.
Professor Marandi, you were born in the United States of America. You are a scholar of literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. You hold joint citizenship. You are a world-renowned academic. Are you a target of the Mossad and of the Israeli military?
I do not know. I do know that security in Iran has asked me to put aside my cell phone. But if I put aside my cell phone, I cannot do interviews. That's the only means that I have to communicate. And I have a responsibility to, as far as it's possible for me, to raise awareness and to prevent the demonization of the Iranian people and to the caricature of the Islamic Republic of Iran, whose only sin for the last 40-some years has been its independence and its support for the Palestinian people. So I don't know if I'm a target, but I thank the gentleman who asked me to get rid of my cell phone for the time being, but I told them I have no option but to remain active online.
Professor Marandi, does Iran, you are a former advisor to the nuclear negotiation team, does Iran have a nuclear weapon?
No. I was the media advisor, but no. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. Iran does not have a plan to produce a nuclear weapon. You know, and I'm sure many in your audience know that just recently, Tulsi Gabbard stated that Iran is not developing a nuclear weapon. And Iran in the past has never been developing a nuclear weapon. The United States government admits that at least from 2003, Iran has not been developing a nuclear weapon. And I assure you that before then it was not doing so either. However, Netanyahu has been lying about Iran for well over 30 years. In fact, I think the first time that he lied was a weapon. And he's been lying ever since, regularly, saying it's months away, weeks away, a year or two away, ever since. But Western media will not take that context into account. They'll simply, in order to justify aggression, to justify sanctions, to just say what he says. The buildings actually that belong to the nuclear program that have been bombed, these are buildings that experts at the International Atomic Energy Agency regularly visit, and they have never reported that Iran is building a nuclear weapon.
Professor
And one thing that
Marandi,
I should add, because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation on this. And yes,
go ahead. Oh, Professor Marandi, does Iran pose the slightest threat to the national security of the United States of America?
absolutely not. It has never been a security threat to the United States of America. The United States has been attacked once by terrorist organizations based on their own narrative, based on their version of events that they themselves created, and that was blowback. They created Al-Qaeda. Whether one believes that narrative or not, the point is that the only major attack carried out in the United States was brought about by their own creation. They used Al-Qaeda again in Syria, in Libya, and elsewhere. Just one point, Judge, that I'd like to point out, and that is that with regards to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the board of governors is a political entity, and it is dominated by the West. The recent resolution that was passed against Iran, only Western countries voted for it. But since they dominate this body, like all the international institutions and bodies that were created after the Second World War, they got the majority. The only non-Western countries, as far as I know, were Argentina, which you know who's in charge now, Korea and Japan, which are clearly in the Western camp. The global South voted against or did not vote for the resolution, such as China, India, Russia, and others. Yet the resolution was passed because the West was behind it. This is a political decision, and that is in order to put pressure on Iran. But there has never been evidence that Iran is pursuing a nuclear weapon. Iran is well within its rights to enrich uranium at whatever level it wants. And the reason why Iran today enriches uranium at 60% is because Iran wants leverage so that the United States would be forced to remove sanctions that are targeting women and children in Iran, just like in Cuba and elsewhere. The United States removed sanctions against Al-Qaeda, against Syria that's dominated by Al-Qaeda and ISIS today, but it won't remove sanctions from Cuba or Iran. And so this is leverage. And during the nuclear negotiations 3 years ago, when I was a media advisor, I said this repeatedly and on Hard Talk on the BBC, that Iran enriches uranium at 60% so that it can use this to force the Americans to stop crushing ordinary Iranians.
How do you see the military conflagration between Israel and Iran ending?
The only way is for the Israeli regime to be convinced that this was a grave mistake. The Iranians, under no circumstances, will accept an end to this conflict where the Israeli regime achieves anything, because they carried out this unprovoked aggression, slaughtered women and children, targeted media, targeted journalists. They bombed a hospital this morning in the city of Kermanshah. I posted it on Twitter. They are targeting ordinary people, but Western media, they ignore it, just like they ignore it in Gaza. Just remember in Gaza how they were saying initially that the tunnels were under the hospitals. Well, why are Israeli anti-defense systems in the middle of Tel Aviv in crowded streets? And when they bombed the hospitals, Western media and even Western intelligence agencies initially tried to pin the blame on the resistance in Gaza. But then the Israelis bombed hospital after hospital after hospital and killed babies in incubators by pulling by cutting the electricity. And then Western media, instead of condemning the Israelis, they moved on. I was in Lebanon when the war started. and when Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was martyred. Western journalists based in Beirut, they have fixers that are Lebanese, drivers that are Lebanese, producers that are Lebanese. They would constantly say Hezbollah's targets are being struck, Hezbollah strongholds are being struck, whereas they knew that the apartment buildings that were being brought down in Beirut and elsewhere they all belong to ordinary citizens. But they simply repeat these narratives in order to justify mass murder.